It was Linda and Mark's 25th wedding anniversary, and she had arrived at their favorite restaurant early, having made reservations at the most expensive place in town. It cost $150 for just the table reservation, but for her husband of 25 years, nothing was too expensive. She knocked on his office door with a smile, expecting to see Mark's face light up like it did when they were newlyweds. But when Mark looked up from his desk, his expression was one of total annoyance. "Oh, it's you," Mark muttered without even looking Linda in the eye. "Happy anniversary, my love," Linda said, holding out the expensive Rolex watch she'd purchased, with the engraving already in place. "I got you that watch you admired last month, the one with the leather band, just like you wanted." Mark sighed deeply as if Linda's gifts were an unbearable burden. "Linda, we need to talk," he said dryly, not even acknowledging the $3,000 watch. They sat down in the restaurant of their beautiful home, a house that Linda had completely financed when Mark started his consulting business. It had been $80,000 from her inheritance that she'd received from her grandmother's estate. Money she'd saved and protected for years, working double shifts as a part-time bookkeeper for 15 years. "You know, Linda," Mark began in that cold voice he had developed over the past few years, "I've been thinking a lot about our anniversary, about our marriage, and about what would truly make me happy." Linda nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen. That trip to Europe you mentioned, maybe that new car, or perhaps we could renew our vows." Mark looked her straight in the eye, and what Linda saw there chilled her to the bone. It was pure contempt. "The one thing I'd love most as an anniversary gift," Mark said slowly, savoring each word, "is if you just died." The world stopped. Linda literally felt as if someone had ripped her heart from her chest. Mark's words echoed in her ears like an endless loop. Her husband, her own husband, had wished for her death as an anniversary gift. What? What did you just say?" she managed to whisper, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. "You heard me," Mark continued with a coldness that cut through Linda like knives. "I'm tired of you, Linda. Tired of your constant calls to my office, your unexpected visits, of you always being here bothering me. My life would be so much easier and happier if you would just disappear." Linda's hands were shaking uncontrollably. 58 years of living, 25 years of being Mark's wife, and she never ever thought she would hear those words come out of Mark's mouth. "Mark," she managed to say between sobs, "I'm your wife. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," Mark interrupted, standing up from his chair. "And that's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your emotional needs." The $3,000 watch was still in Linda's hands, the leather band beginning to feel heavy. Everything she had dreamed for that day, romance, celebration, maybe renewed intimacy after months of distance, vanished like smoke. "But honey," Linda tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," Mark replied, crossing his arms. "The fact that I'm all you have. Go get a life of your own and leave me alone." Linda got up from her chair, her legs trembling, carrying that watch that now felt like a mockery. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," she murmured. "After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" Mark laughed sarcastically. "Linda, everything you've done has been for your own benefit. To feel needed, to have control over my life. But I'm not the same man who needed you 25 years ago." Linda walked toward the door, feeling as if each step was costing her years of her life. As she reached the threshold, she turned one last time, hoping to see some regret in Mark's eyes, some sign of the loving husband she once knew. But she only saw impatience. Impatience for her to leave so Mark could finally live his life without the nuisance Linda represented. "Happy anniversary, Mark," she murmured. And she walked out of that restaurant, closing the door behind her. She didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time she would ever enter that place as the wife who had sacrificed everything. Because what her husband didn't know was that he had just awakened something in Linda that had been dormant for decades. She arrived at their home with trembling legs and a broken heart. The $3,000 watch ended up in the drawer of her nightstand. The engraved message, "To my forever love, Linda," now a reflection of the tears that wouldn't stop falling. She sat on their matrimonial bed, the same bed where they had conceived their 2 children, where she had comforted Mark through his business failures, where she had cried tears of happiness every time Mark called her his soulmate. How had she ended up here? How could her own husband, the man she had loved for 25 years, the man she had married in a beautiful ceremony that cost $15,000 that her parents had saved for years to pay for, wish for her death with such coldness? She began to remember everything, absolutely everything she had done for Mark over the past 25 years. When Mark decided to start his consulting business at 35, Linda gave him her entire inheritance of $80,000. Money she had received from her grandmother's estate, her grandmother who had worked as a seamstress her entire life to save every penny. Her grandmother had told her, "Mija, this money is for your dreams, for your security, not for anyone else's ambitions." But Linda had believed that Mark's dreams were her dreams too. She remembered how Mark's eyes sparkled when she signed over the check. "Thank you, baby. You're making my dreams come true. I promise I'll pay you back with interest when the business takes off," he had said, hugging Linda tight. That was 23 years ago. She had never seen a penny of that money returned. When Mark's business needed additional funding after the first year, Linda took out a second mortgage on their house. $45,000 that she guaranteed with her own credit score. Money she managed to qualify for by working triple shifts at 3 different part-time bookkeeping jobs to show enough income to the bank. She remembered working at Patterson and Associates during the day, doing books for Martinez Family Restaurant in the evenings, and cleaning offices for Thompson Cleaning Service on weekends. She was exhausted constantly, but Mark needed her support. She remembered how relieved Mark was when she presented him with the check. "Don't worry, honey," she would tell Mark every time he worried about cash flow. "Your success is our success. We're a team." When Mark decided he needed an MBA to compete in his field, Linda worked weekends for 2 years to pay for his degree. $38,000 in total tuition costs. Money she earned by cleaning offices on Saturday mornings at $15 an hour, doing bookkeeping for small businesses on Sundays at $25 an hour, and working extra hours at her part-time accounting job at $18 an hour. She calculated that she worked an extra 25 hours every weekend for 104 weekends to earn that money. That's 2,600 additional hours of work, time she could have spent with their children Sarah and Michael, or pursuing her own interests, or simply resting. She never took a day off, never complained when Mark was studying and couldn't help with the children's homework, their sports activities, or household chores. "I want my husband to have everything he needs to succeed," Linda told her friend Martha, as she worked 70-hour weeks while Mark attended evening MBA classes. Martha had looked at her with concern. "Linda, when do you take care of yourself? When do you pursue your own goals?" But Linda had brushed off those concerns. "Mark's success is my success. When he's established, then I can think about my own career." When their daughter Sarah wanted to go to an expensive private college, Linda paid for every semester without a single complaint. $42,000 in total over 4 years. Money she managed by selling her late mother's jewelry collection, pieces that had been in her family for generations, and taking on additional freelance accounting work for 6 small businesses, working until 2 a.m. most nights to meet deadlines. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she would tell Sarah every time tuition was due and Sarah expressed guilt about the cost. "Your education is the most important investment we can make. I want you to have opportunities one never had." Sarah would hug her and say, "Mom, I promise I'll pay you back when I graduate." But Linda would wave away those promises. "You don't owe me anything, Mija. That's what mothers are for." When their son Michael got married, Linda organized and paid for the entire wedding. $35,000 so Michael could have the wedding of his dreams. She spent 6 months planning every detail, researching vendors, negotiating prices, and coordinating with Michael's fiancée Amanda on every aspect of the celebration. The most elegant venue in the city, Riverside Manor, cost $12,000 just for the space rental. The flowers, white roses, and peonies that Amanda had seen in a magazine cost another $4,000. The photographer, the one Amanda absolutely had to have after seeing his work on Instagram, charged $3,500. The band, the catering, the cake, the decorations, the invitations, Linda handled and paid for every single detail. "I want my son to have everything perfect for his special day," Linda told Mark as she signed check after check. Mark had smiled and patted her shoulder. "You're such a good mother, Linda. Michael is lucky to have you." And then came the house renovations. When Mark decided their house needed to be updated to reflect his professional success, Linda didn't hesitate for a second. "Don't worry about the cost," she told him. "I'll take care of it." It was $75,000 from her retirement savings, the money she had been setting aside for their golden years together since she was 35 years old. The kitchen renovation alone cost $28,000. Mark wanted granite countertops, top-of-the-line appliances, and custom cabinets. The master bathroom renovation, with the marble tiles Mark had fallen in love with at a showroom, cost another $18,000. The living room, dining room, and Mark's home office updates cost an additional $29,000. But it didn't end there. When Mark's business hit a rough patch 5 years ago, Linda became the primary breadwinner. She took on a full-time accounting position at Stevens & Company, a mid-sized accounting firm, while maintaining her freelance clients on nights and weekends. She was working 65 hours a week while Mark restructured his business, which really meant he spent most days playing golf with potential clients and attending networking lunches that produced very little actual business. Every month, when Mark's business brought in less than their household expenses, there she was, covering the $3,200 mortgage payment, the $650 car payment for Mark's BMW, the $400 car payment for her modest Honda, the $350 monthly insurance payments, the utility bills, the grocery expenses, not charging Mark a single penny in interest, happy to support the husband she loved. "Don't worry about it, honey," she would tell Mark when he expressed frustration about his business struggles. "We're partners in this marriage. When you were successful, you supported us. Now it's my turn to carry us through this rough patch." Mark would kiss her forehead and say, "You're amazing, Linda. I don't know what I'd do without you." When Mark's business partner Steve embezzled $30,000 and left him in debt and legally exposed, who covered the loss? Linda. $30,000 that she took from their joint savings account, money she had contributed over the years from her bonuses and overtime pay, money that meant eating budget meals for months, canceling their planned vacation to Hawaii that Linda had been looking forward to for 2 years, and Linda taking on yet another part-time bookkeeping client to rebuild their emergency fund. "Don't worry, Mark," she told him, seeing his devastated and panicked face when Steve disappeared with the money. "That's what spouses are for. We'll get through this together." Mark had held her and cried that day, telling her she was his angel, his savior. "I promise I'll make this up to you, Linda. When the business recovers, we'll take that trip to Europe you've always wanted." But when the business recovered 2 years later, Mark never mentioned the Europe trip again. Instead, he bought himself a new BMW without consulting her, justifying it as a business expense. She got up from the bed and went to her home office where she kept all the receipts, all the proof of every single penny she had spent supporting Mark's career and their family over 25 years. They were boxes and boxes of documents that she had kept, not because of mistrust, but because it made her proud to remember everything she had been able to do for the man she loved and their family. Bank statements, loan documents, receipts from contractors, tuition payments, wedding expenses, business investment records, everything meticulously organized by year in labeled manila folders. She started doing the math, something she had never done before because she had never wanted to keep score in their marriage. Supporting Mark's business startup, $80,000 from her inheritance. The second mortgage for business expansion, $45,000. Mark's MBA program, $38,000. Sarah's college education, $42,000. Michael's wedding, $35,000. House renovations that Mark requested, $75,000. Covering business losses when Steve embezzled, $30,000. The mortgage and household expenses during Mark's business difficulties, at least $48,000 over those 3 years. Birthday and anniversary gifts for Mark over 25 years, expensive watches, golf equipment, clothing, electronics, at least $15,000 more. Vacations that she had paid for when Mark's business was struggling, another $12,000. Car repairs and maintenance for Mark's series of BMWs over the years, approximately $8,000. The total was devastating. Over $428,000, almost $500,000 that she had invested in their marriage, Mark's success, and their family over 25 years. And all of it to hear that Mark's greatest desire was for her to die. Tears fell onto the papers as she added and subtracted, her accounting skills making the calculations precise and undeniable. If she had invested that money in a simple index fund earning 7% annually over 25 years, today she would have more than $1. 2 million. She could be financially independent, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable retirement instead of sitting in her home office at 58 years old, crying over bank statements and feeling like a fool. But no, she had chosen to invest in love. She had chosen to believe that the money spent on her husband and family was money well invested. That every sacrifice was worth it because in the end, she would have a husband who cherished her and would take care of her in their golden years together. How naive she had been. How completely and utterly foolish. She picked up the phone and dialed Mark's office number. She needed to hear Mark's voice one more time. She needed to confirm that Mark had really said those terrible words, that this wasn't some cruel nightmare she would wake up from. Thompson Consulting. This is Jennifer speaking. Mark's secretary answered with a tone that seemed different somehow, less professional and more intimate than Linda remembered. Hi, Jennifer. This is Linda, Mark's wife. Is he available? Linda asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Oh, hi, Mrs. Thompson, Jennifer replied, and Linda definitely heard something strange in her voice, a nervousness that hadn't been there before. He's in a very important client meeting right now. He said he didn't want to be disturbed unless it was a real emergency. There was something in Jennifer's tone, a possessiveness that made Linda's intuition prickle. Can you please tell him his wife called about our anniversary dinner plans? He mentioned that he might be working late tonight. Jennifer said quickly, too quickly. Something about a big presentation tomorrow. I can take a message if you want. Linda paused, processing not just the words but the way Jennifer said them, as if she knew more about Mark's evening plans than his wife did. Please just tell him Linda called and that it's important. I'll make sure he gets the message, Jennifer replied, but her tone suggested she had no intention of interrupting Mark's meeting for his wife's call. The call ended with an abrupt click that left Linda staring at the phone, a new suspicion forming in her mind. She tried Mark's cell phone. He answered after several rings, his voice impatient and distracted. What do you want now, Linda? Mark asked, not even a greeting after 25 years of marriage. Mark, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today, she asked in a trembling voice. Of course, I meant it, Mark replied without a hint of remorse in his voice. Linda, it's time for you to understand that I need space in this marriage. Your obsession with us being together constantly isn't healthy anymore. Obsession? Linda repeated, incredulous. You call a wife's love and commitment obsession? Yes, exactly that, Mark replied with the same cold tone. And I hope that after today you finally get the message loud and clear. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life without your constant emotional demands and neediness. In the background, Linda thought she heard a woman's laugh, quickly muffled. Mark, are you alone? She asked. Of course I'm alone, Mark replied too quickly. I'm at the office working. Some of us have real responsibilities. Linda hung up the phone without saying goodbye. There was no misunderstanding, no room for hope that Mark had spoken in anger and would apologize. Her husband truly believed that her love was a burden, that her presence in his life was a problem he needed to solve. And based on what she had heard, there might be someone else involved in his desire to push her away. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment they had shared over 25 years. Their first date at that little Italian restaurant downtown. Their wedding day, dancing to At Last by Etta James while her father cried with joy. The day Sarah was born and Mark held her tiny hand, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "We made this perfect little person together." The day Michael took his first steps, running straight into Mark's arms while Linda clapped and laughed with delight. Had it all been a lie? Had she been living in a fantasy while Mark grew to resent her more each year? Or had she simply married a man who had become so selfish and entitled that he couldn't see beyond his own needs? She remembered their early years when Mark would bring her flowers for no reason, when he would call her from work just to say he missed her, when he would hold her after making love and tell her she was the most beautiful woman in the world. When had that man disappeared? When had the loving husband been replaced by this cold stranger who wished for her death? At 3 o'clock in the morning, something fundamental changed inside Linda. The sadness began to transform into something different, something more powerful, into anger, into indignation, into the clear understanding that she had been used, manipulated, and taken for granted for years. Her husband wanted her to die. Well, maybe it was time to give Mark exactly what he asked for, but not in the way he expected. The next day, she woke up with a mental clarity she hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something much more powerful than grief. Determination. Pure, focused determination. If her husband wanted her to disappear from his life, she would, but not in the way Mark expected. She would disappear, but she would take with her everything she had contributed to their life together. Every dollar, every sacrifice, every opportunity cost would be calculated and reclaimed. She put on her best business suit, the navy blue one she wore to important client meetings, and went out with a very defined purpose. First stop, the bank where she had a joint business account with Mark for his company's emergency expenses. That account she had funded over the years whenever Mark's business had cash flow problems, and in which she currently maintained a balance of $35,000 for any unforeseen business expenses that might arise. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," greeted the manager, Mr. Rodriguez, a kind man in his 50s who had known her for over a decade. "How can I help you today?" "I want to close joint business account number 7892346, she said with a smile that he interpreted as routine business, but which was in reality pure strategic thinking. "Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance of $35,000, he warned, checking his computer screen with concern. "Is there a problem with the account?" "Not at all," Linda replied smoothly. "I'm restructuring our business finances. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account." She signed the papers with a steady hand, each signature feeling like a small act of reclaiming her power. Seeing those $35,000 transferred to her personal account gave her a satisfaction she hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning of what would be a comprehensive financial reckoning. Next stop, her lawyer's office. Margaret Chen had been her friend since they met in a continuing education class for bookkeepers 15 years ago. Linda had slowly distanced herself from Margaret over the years because Mark found her too aggressive and a bad feminist influence. Mark had been particularly critical after Margaret's own messy divorce 5 years ago, saying things like, "I don't want you getting ideas from that bitter woman." But Linda knew that Margaret had built a successful family law practice and had a reputation for getting excellent settlements for women in difficult divorces. "Linda," Margaret greeted her with surprise and genuine warmth when she walked into the law office. "I wondered when you would finally walk through that door. I've been waiting for this day for years." Margaret's office was impressive, with law degrees on the wall, legal texts lining the shelves, and a large mahogany desk that spoke of success and competence. "I need your help, Margaret. I want to file for divorce, and I want to make sure I get everything I'm legally entitled to." "Sit down and tell me everything," Margaret said, pulling out a legal pad and settling in for what she clearly expected to be a long conversation. Linda told her about the cruel anniversary dinner, about the years of financial support she had provided for Mark's business and career, about her growing suspicion that Mark was having an affair with his secretary Jennifer, about how she had sacrificed her own career dreams to support his ambitions, about the coldness and emotional abuse that had gradually increased over the past few years. Margaret took detailed notes, asking pointed questions about assets, financial contributions, timeline, and evidence of adultery. "Linda," Margaret said after more than an hour of discussion, "you have an excellent case for divorce. 25 years of marriage, significant financial contributions to his business that you can document, possible evidence of adultery if we can prove it, and what sounds like a clear pattern of emotional abuse. In this state, we can get you half of everything acquired during the marriage, including his business assets, plus substantial alimony given the length of the marriage and your financial contributions." "I want more than that," Linda replied, a steel in her voice that surprised both women. "I want him to understand exactly what it costs to lose me and everything I've contributed to our life together." "Then we need to be very strategic about this," Margaret smiled, recognizing a kindred spirit in Linda's newfound determination. "And we need to gather evidence quickly and quietly before he knows what's coming. In divorce, the person who is best prepared usually gets the best outcome." The papers included not only the divorce petition, but also a temporary restraining order preventing Mark from moving any marital assets, evidence of his adultery in the form of photographs and email printouts, and a demand for immediate temporary spousal support of $5,000 per month based on Linda's financial needs and Mark's documented income. By Thursday afternoon, Mark was calling Linda's new cell phone number frantically. She had changed her number and given the new one only to her attorney, her children, and a few close friends. "Linda, what the hell are you doing?" he screamed when she answered. "You can't just ambush me like this at my office. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this was? My business partner, my employees, everyone saw that process server. How am I supposed to explain this?" "I'm granting your anniversary wish," Linda replied calmly from her new apartment, a beautiful two-bedroom place in the Riverside district that she had rented using money from her personal savings. "You wanted me to disappear from your life. Consider this the beginning of my disappearance." "But Linda, this is completely insane," Mark continued, his voice switching between anger and panic. "We can work this out. Whatever problems we've been having, we can go to counseling, we can fix this. We don't need lawyers and courts and all this drama." How interesting, Linda thought. Now that Mark faced real consequences, their problems were suddenly fixable. After wishing for her death just weeks earlier, he was now ready for marriage counseling. "Mark," Linda said with ice in her voice, "for 25 years I've been the one fixing our problems, funding your dreams, and supporting your decisions. You told me your greatest anniversary gift would be my death. Well, I'm giving you the death of our marriage instead." "You're being completely ridiculous and vindictive," Mark replied, his tone switching from panic to anger as he realized Linda wasn't going to be manipulated into backing down. "I was just upset that night. You know how stressed I've been with work pressures. I didn't mean those things I said." "Oh, you didn't mean them?" Linda asked with mock surprise. "Because you sounded pretty convincing when you said them. And based on your emails with Jennifer, it seems like you've been planning to get rid of me for quite some time." There was complete silence on the phone. Mark hadn't expected Linda to know about Jennifer or to have access to his private communications. "Linda, I don't know what you think you know, but—" Mark started, but Linda cut him off. "I know everything, Mark. The affair, the hidden bank accounts, your plans to claim I'm mentally unstable to reduce your financial obligations, the jewelry you bought Jennifer with our money. I know all of it." The silence stretched for almost a full minute before Mark spoke again, his voice much smaller and more desperate. "Linda, please, let's be reasonable about this. Yes, Jennifer and I have gotten close, but it's not what you think. It's just, we work together every day, and you and I have been having problems. We've been having problems because you've been having an affair and treating me like garbage while I supported you financially," Linda interrupted. "And according to your emails, this has been going on for 8 months while you've been taking my money and planning your exit strategy. How did you get my emails?" Mark demanded, his voice turning angry again. "That's private correspondence. You can't use that in court." "Actually, Mark, as your wife, I had every legal right to access communications on our shared computer using our shared internet connection. My attorney assures me it's all completely admissible." The divorce proceedings moved quickly, and every revelation was more damaging to Mark's case and reputation than the last. Margaret was thorough and ruthless in her preparation, presenting evidence not only of Mark's adultery, but also of his hidden assets, his emotional abuse of Linda, and his attempts to manipulate the divorce proceedings. The judge assigned to their case, the Honorable Patricia Williams, was an experienced family court judge in her 60s who had seen every type of marital misconduct and had little patience for husbands who tried to cheat both on their wives and in their divorce settlements. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Williams said during one particularly contentious hearing, "not only have you committed adultery and attempted to hide marital assets, but the evidence shows a pattern of emotional abuse toward your wife who supported your career for 25 years. This court finds your conduct reprehensible and will take it into consideration in the final settlement." Mark's attorney, Robert Kim, an expensive lawyer Mark had hired in desperation, tried to argue that the hidden assets were business investments that Linda had no claim to. But Margaret's documentation was too thorough and Mark's deception too obvious. The final settlement exceeded even Linda's expectations. She was awarded 60% of all marital assets, including 60% ownership of Mark's consulting business, the marital home, Mark's retirement accounts, and $4,500 per month in alimony for 15 years or until she remarried. The judge also awarded Linda additional punitive damages for Mark's attempts to hide assets and his emotional abuse. The total settlement was worth over $800,000, plus the ongoing alimony payments that would total over $800,000 over the 15-year period if Linda never remarried. Mark's attempts to claim that his business was separate property failed completely when Linda's financial records showed her extensive investments in its development, from the original $80,000 startup capital to the ongoing support during difficult periods. The judge ruled that Linda had been an equal partner in building the business and was entitled to a majority share given her financial contributions and Mark's misconduct. But Linda's revenge was just beginning, and the financial settlement was only the first phase of Mark's consequences. She had learned during the proceedings that Mark's consulting business depended heavily on his reputation as a stable, trustworthy family man. Many of his clients were family-owned businesses that valued traditional values and ethical behavior. Companies like Henderson Family Motors, Martinez Construction, and Williams Family Restaurant had specifically chosen Mark's firm because they believed he shared their values about family and integrity. Linda realized that Mark's professional reputation was perhaps more vulnerable than his finances. Working with Tom Martinez, the private investigator, Linda developed a strategy for making sure that the truth about Mark's character became known to his professional network. She didn't have to spread gossip or make accusations. She simply had to allow the documented facts to become known through appropriate channels. Tom helped her identify key people in Mark's professional network who should know about his behavior, particularly other business owners whose trust and respect were essential to Mark's success. The first phase involved Linda joining the Metropolitan Business Women's Association, a networking group that included many wives and female business owners who were connected to Mark's professional world. At her first meeting, when asked to introduce herself, Linda simply said, "I'm Linda Thompson, and I'm starting my own interior design business after recently discovering that my husband of 25 years was having an affair with his secretary while I was financially supporting his business." The room fell silent, and within days, the story had reached every major social and business circle in the city. The second phase involved Linda creating a social media presence for the first time in her life. She started an Instagram account called @ Designing My New Life, where she documented her journey of rebuilding her life after discovering her husband's betrayal. Her posts were tasteful and focused on her interior design work, but she also shared her story of financial abuse and emotional manipulation in marriage. The account gained thousands of followers within weeks, and Linda's story was shared throughout their community and beyond. The professional consequences for Mark were swift and devastating. Henderson Family Motors canceled their contract with Mark's firm after learning about his affair and the way he had treated Linda. "We can't work with someone who would betray his wife like that," Jim Henderson told Mark in a phone call. "If you can't be trusted in your marriage, how can we trust you with our business?" Martinez Construction and Williams Family Restaurant followed suit within days, citing concerns about Mark's character and integrity. The loss of these three major clients cost Mark's business over $200,000 in annual revenue, but the reputational damage continued to spread. The City Chamber of Commerce, where Mark had served on the board of directors for 5 years, quietly asked for his resignation after several members expressed concerns about the scandal. The Riverside Country Club, where Mark had been a member for 12 years and conducted much of his business networking, revoked his membership after Linda shared the details of his behavior with several wives of influential members. Jennifer, who had seemed so eager to be with a successful older man and had written passionate emails about their future together, quickly distanced herself when Mark's professional world began crumbling. She quit her job at Mark's firm and within 2 weeks was dating another executive, a married man from a competing firm who apparently offered better financial prospects and more stability. She left Mark a voicemail saying, "I can't handle all this drama and stress. I need to focus on my own career right now." The young woman who had been willing to break up a marriage for financial security had quickly found a replacement when Mark's money and status were threatened. Mark's business, already damaged by the divorce settlement that gave Linda majority ownership, couldn't survive the loss of major clients and the ongoing reputational damage. Within 4 months of the divorce being finalized, Mark was forced to sell his remaining business assets to pay his debts and legal fees. Linda received her court-ordered 60% share of the sale proceeds, which amounted to an additional $120,000 beyond her original settlement. In total, Mark went from being a successful businessman with assets worth over $1.2 million to having less than $150,000 in liquid assets, while facing 15 years of $4,500 monthly alimony payments. His income dropped from over $200,000 annually to less than $60,000 as a junior consultant at a firm that hired him primarily because they could pay him below market rates. At 61 years old, Mark was starting over professionally with a damaged reputation, limited prospects, and substantial ongoing financial obligations to the wife he had tried to discard. Meanwhile, Linda was using her divorce settlement and her newfound freedom to build the life she had dreamed of for decades. With over $920,000 in assets from the settlement and business sale, plus ongoing alimony income, she had the financial foundation to pursue her own entrepreneurial dreams for the first time in her adult life. She had always loved interior design and had a natural talent for it, but had never had the time or money to pursue it seriously while supporting Mark's career and raising their children. Thompson Designs started as a small home-based business, with Linda converting one bedroom of her apartment into a design studio. Her first project was designing her own space, transforming the generic rental apartment into a showcase of her aesthetic vision and design skills. She documented the entire transformation process on her Instagram account, showing before and after photos, explaining her design choices, and sharing tips for budget-conscious design solutions. The transformation was so dramatic and beautiful that it attracted attention from local design bloggers and home improvement enthusiasts. Her second project came through a referral from Margaret, her attorney, who recommended Linda to a friend who was renovating her kitchen. The project was a complete success, and the homeowner was so pleased that she shared photos on her own social media accounts and recommended Linda to several friends. Within 6 months, Thompson Designs had a waiting list of clients and Linda was booking projects 3 months in advance. Linda discovered that her years of managing a household, coordinating Mark's business needs, dealing with contractors and service providers, and working with limited budgets had given her incredible project management and client relation skills. She understood timelines, budgets, vendor management, and client expectations in ways that impressed everyone she worked with. Her attention to detail, her ability to listen to client needs, and her talent for creating beautiful spaces within budget constraints made her extremely popular with homeowners who had been disappointed by other designers. Her business grew rapidly, and within 18 months, Linda had hired 2 assistant designers and had moved Thompson Designs into a beautiful studio space in the Arts District. She was grossing over $300,000 annually and had projects booked 6 months in advance. The business success was satisfying, but the personal transformation was even more meaningful. Linda had discovered that she was a natural entrepreneur with excellent business instincts and leadership skills that had never been fully utilized during her marriage. But the transformation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal and social. Linda reconnected with friends she had lost touch with during her marriage, many of whom admitted they had stayed away because Mark was so controlling and dismissive of Linda's friendships. "We try to stay close to you," her college roommate Sarah told her over lunch, "but Mark made it clear he thought we were a bad influence on you. He monopolized your time and made us feel unwelcome whenever we visited. We missed you so much, but we didn't know how to stay friends with you when he was so hostile to us." Linda realized that Mark's behavior had systematically isolated her from her support network, making her more dependent on him and less likely to recognize his manipulation and abuse. She began reaching out to other old friends and was amazed to discover how many of them had similar stories about Mark's behavior toward them. Her high school friend Maria said, "I stopped calling because every time I did, Mark would answer the phone and make comments about how you were too busy with important things to talk to old friends." Her former coworker Janet said, "Mark made it clear that he thought your job at the accounting firm was beneath you and that you should be focusing on supporting his career instead of maintaining work friendships." As Linda rebuilt her social connections, she also began pursuing interests and activities that Mark had discouraged during their marriage. She joined a book club at the local library, took pottery classes at the community college, learned to play tennis at the municipal courts, and even started taking salsa dancing lessons. At 60, she felt more confident, energetic, and socially engaged than she had since her 20s. She also started dating again, something that terrified and excited her in equal measure. Robert Chun, Margaret's brother, was a 62-year-old widowed architect who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. Margaret introduced them at a dinner party, thinking they might enjoy each other's company as friends who were both rebuilding their lives. Robert was kind, intelligent, and had a gentle sense of humor that made Linda feel comfortable and appreciated in ways she had forgotten were possible. "What I love about you," Robert told her after they had been dating for 3 months, "is how you light up when you talk about your work, your friends, your goals for the future. You're so genuinely happy and confident now. It's magnetic and inspiring to be around someone who is so fully engaged with life." Linda smiled, remembering how Mark used to criticize her for being too emotional about her interests, how he had gradually worn down her confidence until she felt like she needed his approval for every decision, every opinion, every feeling. "I spent 25 years trying to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of what I should be," she told Robert as they walked through the botanical gardens on a Sunday afternoon. "I became so focused on being the perfect, supportive wife that I lost sight of who I was as an individual. Now I'm finally living as myself again, and it's amazing how much space there is to grow when you stop shrinking to accommodate someone else's ego." Robert understood this journey because he had experienced something similar, though less extreme, in his own marriage. His wife had been loving but very traditional, and he had spent years suppressing his creative interests to focus on being a successful architect and provider. After her death, he had slowly rediscovered his passion for photography and travel, and was building a new life that honored both his past love and his future dreams. Linda also became an advocate for other women in similar situations, using her experience and growing platform to help others recognize and escape emotional and financial abuse in marriages. She expanded her Instagram account beyond interior design to include content about recognizing manipulation, setting boundaries, and rebuilding life after divorce. Her blog posts about financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and the process of reclaiming personal identity gained thousands of shares and comments from women around the world. "I read your story and realized I've been living the same nightmare for 18 years, wrote Jennifer from Ohio. "Your courage to fight back and rebuild gave me the strength to see a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce next week. I thought I was going crazy until I read your blog," shared Maria from California. "You helped me understand that what I was experiencing was emotional abuse, not love. I'm in counseling now and starting to make plans to leave." The messages came from women of all ages and backgrounds, united by the common experience of losing themselves in relationships where they gave everything and received contempt in return. The blog led to speaking engagements at women's conferences, domestic violence awareness events, and financial planning seminars focused on helping women achieve independence. Linda discovered that she was a natural speaker who could connect with audiences and inspire them to take action in their own lives. She also began working with local women's shelters, providing pro bono design services to help create welcoming spaces for women and children escaping abuse. Eventually, Linda's advocacy work and personal story attracted the attention of a literary agent who approached her about writing a book. The anniversary gift, How Cruelty Set Me Free, became a bestseller in the personal growth and memoir categories, spending 12 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and earning Linda substantial royalty income in addition to her design business profits. She used a portion of the book's proceeds to establish a foundation that provides legal and financial assistance to women seeking to escape abusive marriages. 3 years after that devastating anniversary dinner that changed her life forever, Linda received an unexpected phone call from Mark. His voice was different than she remembered, smaller, defeated, and desperate. "Linda," he said quietly after she answered her phone, "I know I don't have any right to call you, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm in serious trouble. The business is completely gone. I'm 3 months behind on my alimony payments, and I honestly don't know what to do." "I'm sorry to hear that you're having difficulties," Linda replied genuinely, though without warmth. She was sitting in her beautiful home office in the house she had purchased with cash, reviewing contracts for a luxury hotel renovation that would be her largest project to date and would gross over $200,000 in fees. Through her window, she could see the garden she had designed herself, which had been featured in Better Homes and Gardens magazine as an example of sophisticated outdoor living on any budget. "What do you want from me, Mark?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "I was wondering if we could possibly discuss modifying the alimony arrangement. Maybe reducing the monthly amount, just temporarily, until I can get back on my feet professionally. I've been trying to rebuild my consulting practice, but it's been really difficult with everything that happened." Linda almost laughed at the euphemism. Everything that happened was Mark's way of avoiding responsibility for his affair, his emotional abuse, and his attempts to hide assets during their divorce. "Mark," she said calmly, "do you remember what you told me on our 25th anniversary 3 years ago? You said your life would be easier and happier if I just died. You told me I was suffocating you and that you needed me to disappear from your life. How is that working out for you?" There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Linda could hear Mark breathing, could almost picture him in whatever modest living space he could now afford, surrounded by the remnants of the life they had built together with her money and sacrifice. "I was completely wrong," Mark admitted, his voice cracking slightly with what sounded like genuine emotion. "I was stupid and cruel and selfish, and I didn't realize what I had until I lost it forever. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it all away for someone who didn't even really care about me. I destroyed the most important relationship in my life for a meaningless affair with someone who abandoned me the moment things got difficult." "Yes, you did," Linda agreed matter-of-factly. "And now you're experiencing the natural consequences of those choices. Actions have consequences, Mark. You chose to treat me as if I were worthless while taking advantage of my financial support and emotional labor. You chose to have an affair and plan to leave me while still accepting my money. You chose to wish for my death rather than working on our problems together. Now you understand what I was actually worth to your life and success. Is there any chance you could forgive me? That maybe we could try again?" Mark asked, his voice taking on the pleading tone that Linda recognized from their early years when he would ask for financial help. "I know I don't deserve it, and I know I have no right to ask, but I've learned my lesson. I would never take you for granted again. I understand now how much you did for me, how much you sacrificed." Linda almost laughed at the transparent desperation in Mark's voice. Even now, facing the consequences of his cruelty, his primary concern was what Linda could do for him, not genuine remorse for the pain he had caused her. "Mark, even if I believed you had genuinely changed, which I don't, I would never go back to that life. I'm happier now than I've ever been in my entire adult life. I have a successful business that I built myself, genuine friendships with people who respect and value me, financial security that isn't dependent on anyone else, and most importantly, I have my self-respect and dignity back." She looked around her office, at the awards on the wall from design competitions, at the photos from her book launch party, at the framed first dollar she had earned from Thompson Designs. "But we had 25 years together," Mark pleaded, playing what he clearly thought was his strongest card. "All those memories, all that history we shared, that has to count for something. We have children together, grandchildren someday. Don't you think we owe it to our family to try again?" "It does count for something," Linda replied, watching a pair of cardinals at the bird feeder outside her window, thinking about how much she enjoyed the simple pleasure of watching birds that she never had time for during her marriage because she was too busy managing Mark's needs and demands. "It taught me exactly what I don't want in a relationship ever again. It taught me the difference between being loved for who I am and being valued only for what I can provide. It taught me that some people will take everything you give them and still ask for more, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the full consequences of their actions without rescuing them." The conversation ended with Mark asking her to think about it, and Linda firmly declining to consider any changes to their divorce agreement. As for the alimony reduction request, Linda referred Mark to her attorney. Margaret reviewed his financial situation, which included tax returns showing his reduced income, bank statements showing his limited assets, and employment records showing his struggle to rebuild his consulting practice. She presented his case to the court with a recommendation that the alimony payments remain unchanged. Judge Williams, the same judge who had overseen their original divorce, reviewed Mark's petition and his financial documentation. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Williams said during the hearing, "you created this situation through your own misconduct and poor judgment. The court sees no compelling reason to reduce support payments to a woman you emotionally abused and financially exploited for 25 years. Your reduced income is a direct result of the professional consequences of your adultery and the loss of your business reputation due to your own actions. The court finds that Mrs. Thompson's contributions to your success over 25 years justify the current alimony arrangement, and your current financial difficulties are self-imposed. The alimony payments remained unchanged, and Mark was warned that any further attempts to modify the agreement would require substantial documentation of changed circumstances beyond the consequences of his own misconduct. Linda also learned through mutual acquaintances and social media that Mark had made several attempts to reconcile with Jennifer, but she had moved on to a relationship with another successful businessman and showed no interest in resuming their affair. The young woman who had seemed so eager to break up a marriage for financial security and status had quickly found a replacement when Mark's money and professional standing disappeared. Mark was living in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town, driving a 10-year-old Honda that replaced the BMW he could no longer afford, and working as a junior consultant for a mid-sized firm that paid him less than half what his own business had generated at its peak. At 64, Mark was starting over professionally with a damaged reputation, limited financial resources, and no realistic prospects for rebuilding the success he had once enjoyed. His former business partner David had started his own consulting firm and was actively competing for Mark's former clients, often successfully by emphasizing his own integrity and reliability in contrast to Mark's reputation for personal and professional misconduct. Meanwhile, Linda's life continued to flourish in ways that exceeded even her most optimistic expectations. Thompson Designs had expanded to include commercial projects, and she was being featured regularly in design magazines as one of the region's most innovative and successful interior designers. Her client list now included several hotels, restaurants, and corporate offices, and she had a staff of 8 employees working on projects throughout the region. Her second book, Designing Your Second Act, Creating the Life You Want After 50, had just been accepted by a major publisher and was scheduled for release the following year with a substantial marketing budget and national book tour. The book combined practical advice about starting over after divorce with broader themes about reclaiming personal identity and building authentic relationships in midlife. Linda had also begun a serious relationship with Robert, the widowed architect she had met through her attorney's introduction. After 2 years of dating, they had moved in together in Linda's beautiful home, creating a true partnership between 2 independent, successful people who had both learned the difference between healthy love and codependent relationships. "What I love about our relationship," Linda told her friend Sarah over lunch, "is that we both have full, complete lives individually, and we choose to share them with each other rather than losing ourselves in each other." Robert had similar insights about their relationship. "After my wife died, I thought I would never find love again," he told Linda as they planned a trip to Italy to visit design museums and architectural sites. "But what we have is different from what I had before, maybe even better in some ways, because we both know who we are as individuals. We're choosing to build something together rather than trying to complete each other." 4 years after that terrible anniversary that changed her life forever, Linda was sitting in her design studio, putting the finishing touches on a presentation for her largest project yet, a complete renovation of the historic Riverside Hotel that would establish her as one of the premier designers in the state. The project was worth over $500,000 in fees and would be featured in multiple national design publications. At 62, she had built a business worth over $2 million, owned her home and studio outright, had a robust investment portfolio, and maintained relationships that enriched her life in ways her marriage never had. She kept several framed photos on her desk, not from her wedding day or family vacations with Mark, but from milestones in her new life. There was a photo from the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Thompson Design Studio expansion, showing Linda surrounded by her employees, her friends, Margaret, Robert, and her children Sarah and Michael, who had both come to understand and support their mother's decision to leave their father. There was a photo from her book launch party, where over 200 people had gathered to celebrate her success and hear her speak about overcoming adversity. There was also a photo from the day she received the key to the city from the mayor in recognition of her work with women's shelters, and her contributions to the local design community. In every photo, Linda was surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not for what she could provide them. People who celebrated her success rather than taking it for granted or resenting it. The transformation in her relationship with her children had been particularly meaningful. Both Sarah and Michael had initially been shocked and confused by their parents' divorce, but over time they had come to understand the dynamics of the marriage they had witnessed growing up. "Mom," Sarah told her during a visit, "I realize now that I learned some terrible lessons about relationships from watching you and Dad. I saw him take you for granted and treat you dismissively, and I thought that was normal. I'm so glad you showed me what it looks like for a woman to stand up for herself and demand better." Michael had a similar realization. "Dad always made it seem like you were lucky to have him, like he was doing you a favor by staying married to you," he said during a conversation about the divorce. "I'm embarrassed that I didn't recognize how much you did for our family and how poorly he treated you. I'm proud of you for having the courage to start over and build this amazing new life." Today, 5 years after that devastating anniversary dinner that initially broke her heart, but ultimately set her free, Linda is preparing for the grand opening of Thompson Design's second location, this one in the state capital, where she has been hired to design several high-profile commercial projects. At 63, she has achieved a level of professional success and personal fulfillment that would have been unimaginable during her marriage when she was focused entirely on supporting Mark's ambitions and managing everyone else's needs. She has learned that love without respect and mutual support is not love at all, but exploitation disguised as intimacy. She has learned that supporting someone's dreams should never require abandoning your own, and that true partnership involves both people contributing to and benefiting from the relationship. Most importantly, she has learned that it's never too late to choose yourself, to demand better, and to build a life that reflects your worth rather than diminishing it. The woman who had spent 25 years making herself smaller to accommodate a man's ego, who had given away almost $500,000 to support someone who wished for her death, had finally grown into the full expression of who she was always meant to be. Mark's cruel anniversary wish had become the greatest gift he could have given her, the push she needed to finally wake up and reclaim her life. Mark asked her as an anniversary gift to disappear from his life. She granted Mark that wish in the most spectacular way possible. What Mark never calculated was that by losing her, he didn't just lose a wife who loved him unconditionally. He lost the person who had been the foundation of his success, his biggest supporter, his safety net, his social connector, and his path to respectability in their community. Her disappearance was his gift to her. Her new life was her gift to herself. And it was worth every tear, every moment of pain, and every difficult decision that brought her here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose everything you thought you wanted in order to become the person you were always meant to be. Sometimes the cruelest words become the greatest gift, not because they don't hurt, but because they finally wake you up to a truth you've been avoiding for years. And sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the beginning of the life you were always supposed to have, if only you had been brave enough to claim it. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.